Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching India Today Global. Now, India and China have agreed to resume direct flights as both nations endeavour to normalize ties following 5 years of tensions after the Galwan clashes. Air India and Indigo both will resume services. Airline Indigo announced that it will resume the direct flights from October 26th. Indigo's announcement came shortly after External Affairs Ministry announced that the two countries have reached an agreement for the same. Flights were suspended in the aftermath of the Doklam crisis and further delayed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The airline also added that it will introduce direct flights between Delhi and Guangzhou shortly. The US impasse over shutdown doesn't seem to end soon as political leaders continue to blame each other. Fear over imminent layoffs looms large. The Republicans see it as an opportunity to pressure on Democrats, and as President Trump said, it's also an opportunity to clear dead wood and waste. A report by Mahashweta Lala.
The US shutdown has entered the second day and there is no consensus to break the impasse. As fear of layoffs seems imminent, both Democrats and Republicans continue to blame each other.
What they have done instead is to shut down the government because we won't give billions of dollars to healthcare funding for illegal aliens. That is what has actually happened. To the American people who are watching, the reason your government is shut down at this very minute is because, despite the fact that the overwhelming majority of congressional Republicans and even a few moderate Democrats supported opening the government, the Chuck Schumer AOC wing of the Democratic Party shut down the government because they said to us, we will open the government, but only if you give billions of dollars of funding for health care for illegal aliens. That's a ridiculous proposition.
They own this crisis. They own this shutdown. And instead, they want to use people as political pawns. Russ Vought wants to lay people off. He wants to fire people. He wants to use this shutdown to carry out the agenda that he has wanted all along. It's shameful and it's wrong.
The shutdown began on Wednesday after Republicans and Democrats in Congress failed to agree on a new spending bill. After the first voting to end the shutdown failed, the second attempt will be made on Friday. The White House has moved to pause or cancel billions of dollars in funding for most of the Democratic states, including $18 billion in infrastructure projects in New York and $8 billion in climate-related projects in 16 states that voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. As both parties continue to blame each other, fear of imminent layoffs loom large. The move is also seen as an attempt to put pressure on Democrats.
Everything that we can over the coming weeks, if the shutdown lasts that long, to ensure that people get the essential services that they need, despite the fact that Chuck Schumer has shut down the federal government. It's not going to be perfect because we are in a government shutdown. We are going to have to lay some people off if the shutdown continues. We don't like that. We don't necessarily want to do it, but we're going to do what we have to keep the American people's essential services continuing to run.
Trump administration has been killing jobs. This is a job-killing administration. Job creation is down, but you know what's up? Costs.
President Trump in Truth Social posted that Republicans should use this opportunity to clear deadwood and waste, which will facilitate in saving billions of dollars and make America great again. According to the Congressional Budget Office, as many as 750,000 government workers are facing being furloughed. They will not be paid until the Congress appropriates funding and shutdown ends. Workers deemed to be essential will stay on the job, although they will also not be paid until a funding deal is reached. With Mahashweta Lala, Bureau Report, India Today.
And we're being joined live by Rohit Sharma, my colleague in Washington, D.C., or right now actually in Dallas, United States of America. Rohit, thank you so much for joining me. Day 2 of the shutdown, it seems like he's already starting to put the words to action from New York.
Well, actually, you know what? At the end of the day, look, today is going to be a very important one because it is political. I think people see through it, but it is interfering with lives of federal government employees who've been working, for the government. But importantly, Geeta, President Trump is meeting with Russ Waugh, who was the architect of Project 2025, and they are using this opportunity to threaten the Democrats that president would be ending up, he could end up uh, revamping the agencies and doing mass layoffs. So it's going to be very interesting how this all pans out. Look, we know for a fact there will be another vote on Friday, which is tomorrow. The Democrats are under pressure. It's not a sticking point as far as most Democrats are concerned. But at the end of the day, President Trump might use this an opportunity to basically go back to his agenda. And he famously last year during the campaign said he had nothing to do with Project 2025. And yet today, in crisis, when the government is shut down, he's meeting with Russ Waugh, who is the OMB director, to look at mass firings and revamping the agencies. So I think President Trump and administration is looking at using this as an opportunity to score some political points.
Well, also, he's now weaponized funding. Over here, funding is stopped, government has shut down, but he's used the very same funding, weaponized it against the Democrats. So they are indeed feeling the pressure because he starts with the Democratic New York City.
Absolutely, and that's something he's made it clear. He would never do anything to upset his base, but he would do everything that he can to make sure that Democrats feel the pinch. So he would start with that, Geeta, for 100%. But look, some people on the ground believe that this is a pressure tactic. This is, President Trump trying to negotiate and trying to make sure that the government is open. If the vote does, happen in CR getting passed on Friday, we could see the government opening up soon after that. But this would not last beyond few more days, is what the sources are telling us.
Okay, Rohit, stay on with us because the story of United States of America and what's happening over there continues. President Donald Trump's administration has asked U.S. colleges to sign a deal on some sweeping terms, ranging from foreign enrollment and diversity to ideological values of students and staff. This deal is meant to get preferential access to federal funds, according to a 10-point memo sent by the government. And according to Reuters, the memo demands that schools cap international undergrad enrollment at 15%, ban the use of race or sex in hiring and admissions, freeze tuition for 5 years, require that applicants take the SAT or a similar test, and quell grade inflation. Trump has threatened to cut federal funding for universities over a range of issues such as pro-Palestinian protests against U.S. ally Israel's war in Gaza, transgender policies, climate initiatives, and diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, that's DEI. Rights advocates have raised free speech and academic freedom concerns over actions that they say are aimed at aligning universities with Trump's political agenda. Trump alleges that universities harbor anti-American and anti-conservative values. Rohit, if I could come back to you. These are the terms and conditions for funds to keep flowing into universities. It began, and the big war began with Harvard. But interestingly, Harvard has, even as this announcement comes, hired a guest professor in somebody who prides himself in being a representative of the queer community.
Well, yeah, that hasn't stopped Harvard. But then look, President Trump, what he's doing with this new 10-point memo is trying to make sure that the culture of the university, the hiring practices, what is being taught at these universities, and in fact, admissions and international students, they're held to the standards that the administration wants to dictate. And it started with Harvard. Now you talk about 9 more universities that are getting targeted, including the MIT, University of Texas, University of Southern California, Vanderbilt. So all these universities are being told that if you are not able to adhere to the policies of the White House, we are not going to cut your funding, but you may not get the preferential treatment. And this goes back to, what President Trump had said last year, actually earlier this year, about trying to correct or course correct what's being taught in the universities, the hiring practices, the DI initiative. So not really surprised here. I think this is President Trump doubling down on some of his policies. We'll have to wait and watch how many of these universities can actually fight it out or get a deal done like we've seen that other universities have done in the US.
Okay, we'll have to wait and see how that really pans out. But for now, President Trump has completely weaponized funding in the United States of America. Rohit Sharma, thank you so much for joining us. Several vessels of the Gaza Aid Flotilla, Gaza Sumud Flotilla, have been stopped and their passengers are being transferred to an Israeli port. According to Israeli Foreign Ministry, Greta Thunberg and the Swedish climate campaigner and her friends are safe and healthy. The ministry posted a video that appeared to show Greta Thunberg and several masked and armed Israeli military personnel. The global Sumud Flotilla, which consists of more than 40 civilian boats carrying about 500 parliamentarians, lawyers and activists, including Swedish climate campaigner Greta Thunberg, is trying to break Israel's blockade of Gaza despite repeated warnings from Israel to turn back.
My name is Greta Thunberg. I'm a citizen of Sweden. If you are watching this video, I have been abducted and taken against my will by Israeli forces. Our humanitarian mission was non-violent and abiding by international law. Please tell my government to demand my and the others' immediate release.
And here's some good news. India's free trade pact with the European Free Trade Association is now in force. Promising $100 billion in investment, new jobs and easier market access, Swiss wines and watches may just get cheaper. How will this deal deliver transformative gains for India's economy? Here's a report by Farhan Khan.
India has officially put into motion its free trade agreement with the European Free Trade Association, a four-nation bloc comprising Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. Signed in March 2024, the deal took effect yesterday, marking a pivotal moment in India's trade diplomacy.
With free trade agreements giving access to Indian exporters, Indian industry, Indian service providers, and providing millions of jobs for our young men and women. It's a great day today on the auspicious occasion of Navami, on the eve of Dasera. It's a day of celebration and truly grateful to Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his leadership in helping India overcome the hesitations of history, because for over 2 decades, India could not do a single agreement with any European country. And now we are on the verge of, within a span of 2 years, having all of European countries under our FTA umbrella.
At its core, a free trade agreement is designed to lower or eliminate tariffs, reduce barriers to services, and promote bilateral investment. But this pact goes far beyond duty cuts. It's a long-term bet on India's economic potential. In return for market access, the EFTA bloc has pledged a staggering $100 billion of investment into India over the next 15 years. This is not short-term speculative capital, but long-term investment aimed at capacity building and job creation, expected to generate at least 1 million direct jobs in India. Strategically, this is a big win for New Delhi. Unlike many other FTAs, this agreement contains a safeguard clause. If EFTA members fail to deliver on their investment promises, India has the right to roll back tariff concessions. That makes it one of the most balanced trade deals India has ever signed, ensuring accountability from its partners. Switzerland alone has offered concessions covering nearly 100% of India's non-agricultural exports, while Iceland and Norway have opened up opportunities for food preparations, confectionery, rice, coffee, and processed fruits. Indian goods will now find easier entry into high-value European markets. For EFTA, the benefits are equally significant. Swiss wines, watches, chocolates, and Norwegian seafood are all set to become cheaper for Indian consumers. Duties on wines, for example, will be progressively reduced from 150% to as low as 25% over a decade. Medicines, dyes, iron and steel products, and textiles from EFTA will also see tariffs slashed immediately or within a few years. The deal is also geopolitically significant. At a time when India is negotiating FTAs with the EU, the US, Oman, and Israel, the EFTA Pact strengthens India's credibility as a serious player in global trade negotiations. For EFTA nations, this is equally strategic. Partnering with one of the world's fastest growing major economies gives them a stake in India's growth story. This free trade agreement is more than a trade pact. It is a strategic bridge linking India to a high-income bloc, deepening its economic diplomacy, and fueling its ambition to become a global manufacturing and services hub. With Farhan Khan, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
Tesla CEO Elon Musk became the first person ever to achieve a net worth of nearly $500 billion, propelled by a rebound in the EV company's shares and surging valuations of the tech entrepreneur's other startups this year. His net worth stood at $500 billion as of 4:15 p.m. ET, according to Forbes Billionaires Index. Musk's fortunes are tied closely to Tesla, where he held more than 12.4% stake as of September 15. The stock has risen more than 14% so far this year and closed 3.3% higher, adding more than $6 billion to Musk's net worth. And on Statecraft today, we discuss snapback sanctions on Iran after US withdrawal. Now, Europe has activated the controversial snapback sanctions against Iran, reinstating UN restrictions. While this is a serious blow to the Jcpoa nuclear deal, what are the implications of this decision by France, Germany and the UK going to be? Has diplomacy with Iran failed completely, and will Tehran retaliate? Watch an excerpt from my show available on India Today Global's YouTube channel.
Priority starting with the nation of Iran. My position is very simple. The world's #1 sponsor of terror can never be allowed to possess the most dangerous weapon.
Europe has pulled the trigger on the so-called snapback sanctions against Iran. France, Germany and the United Kingdom activated the mechanism at midnight on Sunday. That single move automatically reinstated long-dormant UN sanctions. Sanctions suspended for nearly a decade.
UN sanctions targeting Iranian proliferation will be reimposed.
And we support the reimposition of pre-2015 UN sanctions on Iran.
The symbolism is impossible to miss. The landmark 2015 nuclear deal, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or the Jcpoa, is finished. So what does this mean for the future of diplomacy, West Asia and the global order? Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. The word snapback sounds technical, but it is more than that. It refers to a clause built into the Jcpoa. It allowed any signatory to reimpose UN sanctions if Iran broke its nuclear promises. The sanctions, which were first applied between 2006 and 2010, were only suspended when Iran accepted strict limits in 2015. At the time, it was celebrated as a rare diplomatic victory. Today, that hard-won structure has collapsed. The move by Europeans is less about technical violations and more about one thing: trust is gone. The trio, France, Germany and the UK, say Iran has broken almost all of its commitments. In their words, they had no choice. But timing matters. Why now? And why just before Russia took over the Security Council presidency in October? The sanctions were set to expire permanently in mid-October. European diplomats acted in August to ensure snapback was complete before Moscow could shield Tehran from consequences. Iran's offenses, according to Europe, range from blocking inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA, hiding over 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium, and showing no willingness to engage in genuine diplomacy. So what actually happens when sanctions snap back? This is not just diplomacy. It is economic warfare on a global stage. The sanctions ban weapons imports and exports. They freeze assets, block officials from travel, prevent technology transfers for missiles, and strike directly at the lifeline of the Iranian economy, oil and banking. Foreign Minister Araghchi went on the offensive. He called the snapback an abuse of process. He argued that UN resolutions underpinning the Jcpoa had already expired in October. Legally irrelevant to Europe perhaps, but resonant with Iran's allies. Hardliners inside Iran almost welcomed the sanctions, calling nuclear deal a pure loss. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has shut the door firmly on any talks with the United States of America. But what about Russia and China, two permanent members of the Security Council who strongly oppose all this? Moscow is fuming. It insists the sanctions are null and void and accuses the West of manipulating global institutions. Days before snapback took effect, Russia and Iran signed a $25 billion deal to build nuclear reactors, sending an unmistakable message. China stays quieter, but its role is no less critical. It has long been Iran's vital oil customer, picking up cheap energy others will not touch. The key question now: will Moscow and Beijing openly defy sanctions or tread more carefully, keeping deals under the radar? For both powers, Iran represents more than nuclear politics. It is a central piece in their competition with the United States and with Europe. As pressure mounts, Tehran grows more dependent on them. Ironically, that may strengthen Iran in the long run. Yes, geopolitics dominates headlines, but daily life in Iran tells the real story. 40% inflation, scarcity of medicine, middle-class families sliding into poverty. The Jcpoa once allowed a brief taste of hope. Now hope feels gone. Supporters argue sanctions could eventually change Iran's behavior. Critics counter, sanctions punish ordinary citizens while strengthening dictatorships.